The man who scarred me for all practices, my first ever practice when he was here, the second time around, not the first time around. Coach Smith joins us here to catch up on his defensive line group and the defensive side of the football. Coach Smith, it looks like growing out a little bit of quarantine beard there, buddy.
Well, that's exactly what it is, Luke. I figured if I'm going to be quarantined, I'm going to be quarantined and not have to shave. So yeah, it's quite white, I guess you could say that, but it is who I am right now, so that's the way it rolls.
Well, I know everybody, of course, right now during COVID-19, I'm sure wants to know too, but everybody within the family safe and healthy, and I know Craig, of course, after accepting a big job to go to San Diego State, is back home with you guys right now, but everybody's safe and sound?
Everything's good. Everything's good. Obviously right now we got Craig and his girlfriend Marquita living here, and of course Charlie, their dog. He's my favorite. He's my buddy. We play ball every day, and I take him on rides in the car when I go down to the gas station, and I'll probably miss Charlie more than I'll miss Craig when he leaves. And then my mother-in-law lives here too. So we've got a house full.
Well, and Coach Castle mentioned in his interview too that you guys were kind enough to welcome him in as he was going through this transition. So sounds like you got a lot of space over there, but it looks like it's back and being occupied.
Well, you know what? It's that's why you get a bigger home. You end up having grandkids, and you have a lot of friends. You want to entertain, you want to do stuff. So if you're going to have a big house, why not use it?
Coach Smith, you, of course, as I mentioned, you've been around college football a long time and have a lot of experience, but of course it's the first time ever going through anything like this. For somebody that's been at multiple different stops, that's probably had a lot of things thrown your way in your career, how's it been kind of handling this wrench that's been thrown your way?
Well, from a personal standpoint, it's been very challenging in that I'm not the most technology sound guy going out there when it comes to all the computer stuff. So I think I've learned more in the last month or 6 weeks on the stuff you can do on computers with Zoom meetings and video and things like that. And I've been wearing Jake Johnston, my GA, out trying to figure out, and Craig coming up and getting me hooked up. And so from that standpoint, it's probably been the most challenging 6 weeks that I've had as a coach, because I'm used to doing things face to face, and sitting there right across from somebody versus having to hook up on a computer and doing like what you and I are doing right now. So that's been the most challenging thing for me. But I can tell you, it's the same thing I tell my players every time we meet or talk. They find ways to be successful rather than excuses not to be, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's got the same playing field right now. So the ones that handle it the best are going to have the most success.
What do you think, and of course, on-field playing time or on-field reps are crucial. It's why you guys have spring football, is you need those reps that you get on the field to find out what you have. But nonetheless, it is what you're in, and everybody is in this position. What do you think Coach Smith can be some positives that you can still take out of this time, even though you, with your own eyes and physically, aren't working with your guys on the field right?
Well, I think a couple things, Luke. I think that obviously this is a critical time because a lot of people are concerned and worried about what is going on out there, and I think if you can convey the message that first off, you're in the same situation they are, and secondly, how much you care about them. And that's always been my goal as a coach, that you're going to ask players a lot of times to do uncomfortable things during the course of a season or a practice or whatever it might be, or there might be some bad days in there. And if they know you care about them, they'll do whatever you ask them to do. So that's first and foremost. I think that's the direction you need to head. Is that they know I care about them, and I think they care about me. They worried about it when I got my hip replaced. They had a little fun with it, but those relationships. It's great to hear from players from all the different years and how they're doing, and that's by developing relationships with them. It's tough when you don't have the physical reps to evaluate. But again, just find the best ways to continue to teach. And I'm a little fortunate than maybe some other positions because I've got older guys I have 6 seniors, and even past that, I've got anywhere from 8 to 10 guys returning that have played a lot. And I've got a good group of young guys that will step in and start getting some playing time this year. So from the standpoint of knowing some abilities that I already know that have a lot of them. They continue to get better. But like I said, with having 6 seniors, I've got a pretty old room.
For us and even for someone like me, really enjoyed the spring just to get to know, obviously not the guys, but obviously the new coaches on staff. And for the 2 new coaches that are on your guys' defensive side, you, of course, were kind of the relationship that has molded those guys together with Coach Stuck during your time down at Florida Tech. And then, of course, Coach Morgan, you coached him when he was a player at Michigan. Just for you from a personal standpoint, I know you've encountered this before during your coaching days, but what it means to be able to welcome guys in on a coaching staff that you have such a close relationship with and have relationships that last much longer.
Well, it makes the transition much easier when you have familiar people. You already know what their work ethic is. You already know how they handle adversity. You already know a lot about them. Like you said, I coached Desmond for 3 of the 4 years I was at Michigan. I went to the defensive line my last year. And believe me, if there's one thing I know about Desmond Morgan, he's a smart, well-prepared individual. And I know his family, and I know where he comes from. So hiring Desmond Morgan was a no-brainer. And then with David, with Stuckman, with Stuck, I had the pleasure of hiring Stuck when I was down at Florida Tech. He coached my DBs for me down there when I was a coordinator, and so I know what he's about. Brad and I have developed a great relationship over the last 3 years, and believe me, his opinion or my opinion to him about these guys was big, because I already had, I knew them as well as anybody. So believe me, we made great hires. I hated to see Dion leave. I hated to see Kyle leave. But that's the thing about guys that are younger in the profession, and that's what they're going to do. I did the same thing, and now I'm heading down the other side of that mountain a little bit. I'm not falling, but I am heading down the other side. So it's good to see those guys advance and get to do things that they have goals in their life, and that's what Desmond will do, and that's what David Stuckman will do, as will Brad Wilson.
You mentioned your group and how you have so many experienced guys coming back. What about that experience is good experience, and maybe what you've seen from a guy like Enoke Mawala, who Noakes is kind of quiet in nature, and kind of one of the biggest things I know for him has been trying to accept that leadership role and become a little bit more vocal during his time here. How have you seen a guy like Noakes really take that on and take more of that leadership role, which you've obviously had many conversations with him to try to maybe take on to that even way before this year?
Well, Luke, that's always a fine line, because you want a guy to work within his own personality. And you're exactly right. Enoke is a quiet person. He's kind of a private person. But the one thing that does speak for Noakes is his work ethic. And, he's made himself into what he is because how hard he works. So first and foremost, that's the best way to be a leader, is by example. Yes, we'd like him to be more vocal, and he's becoming more vocal. But you know what? The old cry wolf, if somebody's always saying something too much, sometimes people don't listen, so it's a little bit better when a guy that doesn't say a whole lot, all of a sudden he has something to say. People listen up because they think, well, this has got to be important and it matters, so it's not like a guy has to jump out there and speak every day, but yeah, we're always on Enoke to be a little more vocal and have a little more leadership, not just in my room or our room, but with the whole defense and with the team, because he's the guy that's earned that right.
A big part of why the defensive numbers last year improved in areas, such as pass defense was a big area of improvement last year, only behind North Dakota State in the league in terms of those numbers. And you think third down defense was a drastic change for the positive this past year. A big part was you were able to rotate more guys in up on that defensive line front. This year, when you look at your group, even though, again, the obvious, not having time right now this spring to see them. I hopped into your meeting last week, and our screens were much smaller because you have so many guys that are within your position group that it seems like can fill key roles.
Yeah, you know what, and I'm not gonna try to hide it or run from it, Luke. We should be good. You know, it's been a 3-year process of building that room with myself and Brad and Coach Mowry. You know, evaluating guys and bringing guys into the program that we think fit what we do, what we believe in, and the work ethic that it takes to get better. And like I said, they got 6 seniors, and they didn't walk in the door being guys that could play right away. They've worked at it. You know, other than Anoke, those guys, most of them are all either got here when we first got here, or they were coming into their first year. So, you know, it's exciting to watch them develop. And, you know, it's the one thing I always guard them against is that the mistake that older players make, or experienced players, is that they think they know everything, you know, that they can't get any better than they are now. And in my opinion, you either get better or you get worse every time you do something, and you never stay the same. So it's always a challenge for an older guy that when, let's say you're doing an install of a defense that you've run every year since you've been here. Well, all of a sudden they shut their ears off and I know this one. Well, no, there's always something you can pick up to get a little bit better at what you're doing. You know, and then on top of that, it's their responsibility to teach the new guys or the younger guys, you know, what they know. Yeah, it's in my room's a fun room. Those guys have a lot of experience, but I think in the same light. And I've challenged them every day that we should be a dominant group. And if we're not, then we've let the team down.
You mentioned it should be a dominant group, and as you alluded to, a lot of that is because of the senior leadership you have within that room. Even though, again, you may not see them physically right now, has there maybe been anybody, and I don't want to put you on the spot necessarily, maybe pinpointing one specific person, but what about your group have you been most impressed with? Maybe guys who have really tried to make the most of this situation, and whether that is, you know, learning more film with you in the meetings, taking advantage of those opportunities. Who are some of those guys right now within your room that you've really liked how they've responded to the situation?
Well, you know, as a whole, I can tell you this, Luke, before they left, you know, we had set weight goals for them, and I'm talking about their body weights and then body fats and stuff like that. And it was amazing that the amount of gains that they were making before they left. And the good news is, unless they're lying to me, okay, because I have them report their weight to me every Friday, they're still right around where they when they left. You know, you worry about them doing so well because they're here and they have all the nutrition, they have the weight room, they have all that stuff, you know, the kitchen in the office to help them eat, you know, but for the most part, they've done a great job of as a group of maintaining or still achieving those goals that we set. You know, and again, find a way to be successful rather than an excuse not to be. And, you know, so hopefully that's the case when they walk back in here in June, July, or August 1, whenever it is, you know, they're going to pick right up where they left off. You know, so, you know, I'm not a big guy on trying to point guys out as far as individuals, you know, because I'd leave somebody out, you know, that does a great job, you know, and, you know, but as a group, they've done an unbelievable job of doing what we asked them to do, get bigger, get stronger. And then obviously now we still meet with them 3 days a week, and, you know, not so much right now because it's dead week with academics and then finals next week. But, you know, we've been installing defenses just like we were if we were in spring ball. And, you know, to have them ask questions, young guys jump up and ask a lot of questions. Sometimes I got to tell Jordan Lawrence that you're only allowed to have 3 questions per meeting, right? Because, you know, he can wear you out. But that's okay. I always tell them no question is too stupid. If you ask the same question over the next day, then I get pissed, you know, so you're not paying attention. So anyway, I've been very pleased with all of them, from kids that have been, like I said, 6 seniors all the way down to redshirt freshmen. You know, so it's a great group. It's a great group.
You know, with all the technology advancement, Coach Smith, that you've been able to make during the last 2 months, you may be able to put this rumor to rest, but I've heard that you're going to be the new social media manager for Sycamore football this year. You just enjoyed this technology so much.
Well, here's a couple things, Luke, that I'll share along those lines. If you see me enjoying social media, if you see me on Twitter, all right, just get a gun and shoot me, all right, because I've gone crazy. All right, I mean, and I'm not saying it's bad or it's wrong. It's not something that I put a lot of stock in. I think there's a lot of good to it, but I think there's a lot of pitfalls and evils to it if you're not careful with it. So to answer that question, no, I don't think I'll be the guy in charge of social media. But like I said at the get-go, I've experienced and got a lot more knowledge about these computers than I used to have. I never knew what a Zoom meeting was, and I didn't know any of that stuff. So I guess I'm all zoomed up.
All zoomed up, and I've heard. I mean, what's the next project around the house? You're telling me you're Mr. Handyman these days.
Well, I can tell you one person will be glad when I go back to work is my wife. I figured out why we've been married so long because I was never home. I think she's about ready to kill me. But no, it's been productive from that standpoint. Now, obviously, you still have a lot of football to do when it comes to recruiting. I mean, if there's one thing that you can do right now, you can recruit. In fact, I was kind of glad you pushed the meeting back just a little bit because I was on the phone with the most recently offered defensive lineman that we offered. So he had called me, and so it was running a little past 115 with him. So I think you did me a favor. But it's been good. It's been good to spend time with Craig. My son and my other son lives here in town, has my 2 grandchildren, and they still bop over every now and then. We're probably breaking some social distancing rules, but they got to see their grandpa and they got to see their grandma. So I'll take that chance. So.
Well, the other Coach Smith, and I'm sure this is probably the hardest question I've asked you all interview long. Where is the nearest jar of mayonnaise in your house from where you are at right now doing this interview?
Well, if you look directly over, I guess would be my, let me point here, the other shoulder, this one right there. That's the refrigerator right there behind me. All right, that silver thing. All right, that's where it's at. It's in there. I have toned it down a little bit. I'm using it's olive oil, reduced fat, versus just a straight clog your vein stuff up. So it is trying to stay a little healthier now that I'm not being able to get in there and be as active in the weight room and doing the stuff. Even though I do have a small weight room set up in the garage that Coach McManus helped me borrow some things. Because I do believe in staying active, but no, it's less than 6 feet away. I can tell you.
Well, I'm not surprised by that at all. But Coach Smith, it's good that Craig, everybody is doing well, and of course safe and healthy, and continue those trends in the right direction. And hopefully here rather soon we get that call to come back and get reunited. It's definitely missed being around you this spring, but glad that you and everybody are still doing well.
Well, Luke, there's certain people that are always involved with programs wherever you've been, and you say that guy's a stud, and that's you. You do things for people, and you don't expect anything in return, and that's something there's too many people that don't operate that way. They think, what's in it for me? So I can tell you from a coaching staff and the players, we appreciate everything you do because you wouldn't have to put this much time or effort into it. Maybe you just don't have any friends. I don't know. And so maybe you just got nothing else to do in your life. But we do appreciate everything you do because you go above and beyond the expectations.